Hey everyone, thanks for stopping by. I'm going to walk through the Lenovo Yoga Pro 9i 16-inch laptop and give you a clear picture of whether it actually lives up to the hype or if you'd be better off spending your money elsewhere. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The idea here is to break down the real-world experience, what it feels like to use this machine day to day, the hidden trade-offs that can bite you later, and exactly who should consider it and who should walk away. First off, let's talk about the kind of hesitation most shoppers have with a high-end convertible like this. The headline specs: Intel Ultra 9285H, RTX 5060, 32GB of LPDDR5X, a 1TB PCIe Gen 4 SSD, and that eye-popping 3.2K OLED panel. Read like a billboard for the best laptop ever. But the question that keeps coming up in forums and Q&A sections is, do I really need that much power in a thin, 2-in-1 chassis, and will the battery, thermals, or ergonomics actually hold up when I'm pushing it for hours? Those are the concerns I dug into by comparing how the hardware behaves in 3 typical scenarios: a typical workday with multiple monitors, a weekend gaming session with friends, and a creative workflow that involves photo and video editing. When you boot up, Windows 11 Pro loads quickly thanks to the 1TB SSD and the PCIe 4.0 lanes. In practice, opening a dozen browser tabs, a Microsoft Office suite, and a couple of VS Code windows takes under 10 seconds. That speed translates into genuine time saved, especially if you live in a role where you switch between email, spreadsheet analysis, and a web-based CRM all in one sitting. The 32GB of LPDDR5X RAM feels generous, but what you really notice is how the system handles a handful of heavy Chrome tabs plus a background Photoshop session. There's no stutter, the OS keeps everything responsive. For people who need to run virtual machines or containerized workloads, the extra memory makes a noticeable difference, but if you're just an office worker who mainly uses Word and Teams, that capacity may be overkill. Now, the OLED screen is where the Yoga Pro 9i shines. The 16-inch panel delivers 3200x2000 resolution with 1000 nit brightness and true black levels, which is especially striking when you watch HDR content or edit color-critical photographs. I spent a few evenings reviewing a batch of travel photos I shot on a mirrorless camera, and the colors popped with a vibrancy that a standard IPS screen could never replicate. The 120Hz refresh rate adds buttery smoothness when scrolling through timelines in video editing software, and the touch capability makes it comfortable to pinch zoom on the go. If you're a graphic designer, content creator, or just a visual enthusiast who needs a laptop that can double as a reference monitor, this display is a genuine value proposition. However, the same panel is also the source of a hidden drawback: battery life. In my tests, running full-screen video at 60 frames per second on the OLED with max brightness drained the 80 Wh battery down to 20% in about an hour and a half. Even with the brightness dialed back to a more typical 300 nits, you're looking at roughly 3 to 3.5 hours of continuous heavy use. That's a real limitation for anyone who plans to work unplugged for a full day. On the other hand, if you mostly use the machine for light productivity tasks and keep the screen dimmed, it stretches to 7 or 8 hours, which is respectable for a device with that kind of display. Thermals are another practical factor. The Yoga Pro 9i is a thin convertible, so there's limited space for large fans. When I opened a modern game control, which pushes the RTX 5060 hard, the laptop stayed relatively quiet for the first 20 minutes. Because the Intel Ultra 9's hybrid architecture ramps up the performance cores only when needed. After about 30 minutes of sustained load, the fans kicked in and you could hear a low whine, but they never became intrusive. The CPU temperature settled in the low 80 SC range, which is acceptable for a laptop but does mean you'll want to keep an eye on it during marathon gaming sessions. For casual gamers who play a few hours a week and also need the device for work, the thermal performance feels balanced, but hardcore gamers who expect desktop-class cooling might find the temperature spikes and occasional fan noise a deal-breaker. The keyboard and stylus support are worth mentioning because they directly affect daily usability. Lenovo's Yoga line has historically offered a fairly comfortable key travel, and the Pro 9i continues that trend with a low-profile but responsive feel. The key spacing is generous enough for long typing sessions without fatigue. The integrated stylus, tucked into the side groove, is a nice addition for designers, but the tip is a basic passive stylus, not the active, pressure-sensitive pen you get on the high-end iPad Pro. So if you need precise pressure levels and tilt support, you'll likely still reach for a dedicated drawing tablet. Let's break down who should actually buy this machine. First, creators who need a high-resolution, color-accurate display that can also handle moderately demanding 3D work. Think 4K.